everybody, welcome to tonight's show, guys. Apologize, we had some scheduling for earlier, but we got you some breaking news right now. Biden has just admitted on air that if Trump wins, there will not be a peaceful transfer of power. This is huge. This reveals that they do have an inner plan. We already know that congressional Democrats have already planned to try and stop Trump from becoming president if he wins, using the 14th Amendment, saying that he committed the insurrection that happened on January 6th and that violates the law allowing him to be president. We also have Dunkin' Donuts, who is saying that they will not advertise on X or Twitter or Rumble till they remove people like Dan Bongino and Russell Brand from the platform. We have Trump's interview with Fox and Friends, the full interview, and his take on Kamala Harris's running mate. And Google is about to change big time. We have a federal judge who has actually ruled that Google is a monopoly. This is going to change everything. I even have evidence that when you search for Trump, you still get results for Kamala Harris on his page with his information. But if you search on Google for Kamala Harris, you do not see any information pertaining to Trump. So we have all this breaking news. Just want to say thank you to everybody that is watching, to all of our subscribers. And if you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. We want to serve you every day with the top news. And just want to say thank you to all of our members of the channel. And thank you to everybody that gives a super chat or a donation to the channel. It means the world to us. And we want to continue serving you every day with the top news. So let's get right into this. This is breaking news. This is Biden literally coming out and saying that he will not have a peaceful transfer of power if Trump wins the presidency. Straight from his mouth. Check it out.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all.
Do you see that? First, hey, Michael Thomas, member of the channel. Good to have you in the chat. Everybody give a shout out to Michael. So what you just heard was he asked him the truth. He asked him a simple question, and the first thing that comes to mind is what was on Biden's mind. He said, no, if Trump wins, there will not be a peaceful transfer of power. And he's like, no. If Trump loses, and then he tries to change it up with what you're about to hear. But I want to play this real quick again and let it play all the way through.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all.
Right there.
I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath. Have to be a stolen election. Look what they're trying to do now in the local election districts where people count the votes.
Also, if you don't mind clicking the thumbs up like button on this video, really does help to grow the channel. Thank you so much for your support. And I want to give some context where he says about the bloodbath. The bloodbath was pertaining to the Mexico, cars being built in Mexico, taking jobs away, things like that. It had nothing to do with the peaceful transfer of power if he loses the election.
Elected, they're putting people in place in states that they're going to count the votes, right?
Yes, and that's 100%. Right now, the Republican Party, the RNC, is working very hard to make sure that there is people at the ballots in all the states, and especially in the swing states, to make sure that they're going to watch the ballots, make sure that they're counted correctly, and that there's no hiding or that there's no ballot harvesting or anything like that. That's what they're really working hard to do right now, and the Democrats are afraid of that. But I promise you, we will see more truth as the time moves on, as we get to the election day, over what's actually going on with this election. Check this out.
Left agenda in our country's history on a presidential ticket. Because the Democratic ticket is now set. Governor Tim Walz's record in Minnesota includes everything from tax-funded health care for illegals to so-called gender-affirming care for minors, just to name a few, as we've been doing this morning.
Joining us now for his first TV interview, his reaction to this ticket that he's fighting against them to have the right to go to the White House and become the 47th president. Let's welcome the 45th president of the United States, GOP presidential nominee, President Donald Trump. Mr. President, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So,
thank you.
Your reaction to Governor Tim Walz joining Kamala Harris to go against you and J.D. Vance.
I would say my reaction is I can't believe it. I never thought this was going to be the one that was picked. I know him a little bit. I helped him very much during the riots because his house was surrounded by people that were waving an American flag. Doesn't sound like very bad people. And he called me and he was very concerned, very, very concerned that it was going to get out of control. They only had one guard. I guess it was at the mansion or at his house in some form. And he called me. I said, what do you want me to do about it? I was in the White House. He said, if you would put out the word that I'm a good person. And I did. I put out the word. I said, he's a good person. I hope everything's good. And everybody put down their flags and took their flags with them. But they took their American flags.
And just let y'all know, guys, we'll get to the Dunkin' Donut thing in just a moment over them and a whole lot of other advertisers that will not. And they said they will not advertise on X or Rumble because there's people like Dan Bongino, Russell Brand, and others that are very conservative that are on there. They said unless you get those people out, we're not going to advertise there, which isn't right. It's messed up.
MAGA flags, and they left. It was thousands of people. And that was the first time I said, wow, that's very interesting. And he called me back and he thanked me very much. That's my only thing I ever had to do with him. He's a very, very liberal man, and he's a shocking pick.
I apologize. I just realized something's going on with my thing pertaining to. I'm sorry, pertaining to the software that I use. You could hear the audio, but you couldn't see the actual video. I apologize about that.
And I'm thrilled. I could not be more thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, when they selected him, it's really a gift for you because this election is all about the issues. And all of y'all have records. You've been the president. We know where the economy stood. We know what your record is. We know what Kamala Harris's record is, and we know what his record is. And they are extremely progressive. Talk about how you're going to handle this on the campaign trail. Will you just really hone in on how they voted in the past?
Well, I am. I'm going to be doing that. What he wants. If you look at his record with no walls, no security, let everybody in, he's worse than they are. You know, nobody knew how radical left she was, but he's a smarter version of her. If you want to know the truth, he's probably about the same as Bernie Sanders. He's probably more so than Bernie Sanders. She is more so than Bernie Sanders. That's got to be your guide, Bernie Sanders, and that's not a great guide. But there's never been a ticket like this. This is a ticket that would want this country to go communist immediately, if not sooner. We want no security. We want no anything. He's very heavy into transgender. Anything transgender he thinks is great. And he's not where the country is on anything.
Mr. President,
this is a shocking. Let me tell you, this is a shocking pick, and I think it's very insulting to Jewish people, and I think it's very insulting to people that want security. I think it's very insulting to anything having to do with making America great again.
Mr. President, is it true that your team thought for sure that it was going to be Josh Shapiro? Because there was one reporter who was at a J.D. Vance event yesterday, and there were some flyers printed up talking about how J.D. Vance, rather about how Mr. Shapiro was a fraud and corrupt and a lying con man and stuff like that. So it sounds like you were ready to take on him.
That sounds like what you would say.
Well, look, I'm no big fan of Josh Shapiro. I know the state very well. I think we're leading pretty good in that state, but I would have said it would have been a better choice. I would have said others would have better choice. And interesting, just about all of them, except this one, is better than her. She is not nearly as good as the people she was looking at. I know them all in one form or another. And In fact, there was a poll done, and there were some studies done. She's the worst of the group, and she's the one that's leading it. Look at this decision. This is a really bad decision for the country. You know, ultimately, I want the country to have good decisions, because ultimately what we want is for the country to do well. The country can't do well with these two people. They're very similar, and you know, you would have thought she would have reached out and got somebody that's got some different, because her record on security is horrible. She was a border czar, which she doesn't admit it now. You know, the only thing they have going is the media will play off all of the bad things that happened during her term. She was so bad that 5 weeks ago, they wanted to remove her because she was unthinkable to be president. They were going to go with anyone. And then they were afraid that they would offend people if they did that. And all of a sudden, inch by inch, and then she ends up taking over. Now the same press that thought she was the worst vice president in history, which is true, going along with the worst president in history. And he went down after the debate, and there was nothing much they could do. They tried to come back. Then they brought her in, and everybody said, it'll never be her. She's so bad. She's incompetent. And after they studied it a little bit, they realized it's not going to be so easy to do. So they say, well, look, the press is going to do whatever we want, because the press is a rigged deal. The press is the media, outside of you people, of course, but the media is so, they're trying to build her up to the next Margaret Thatcher liberal version, and I don't believe it's going to happen. I hear she's hasn't taken one interview. She would never do an interview like this. That I can guarantee with any network. She doesn't do interviews because she can't answer questions. I don't know how she debates. I heard she's sort of a nasty person, but not a good good debater. But we'll see, because we'll be debating her, I guess, in the pretty near future. It's going to be announced fairly soon, but we'll be debating her. I'd like to see it on Fox, by the way. I would like to see it. My preference would be Fox, but we have to debate.
Do you have an announcement, Mr. Are you working stuff out behind the scenes? Because we haven't heard about it yet.
No, but I can tell you every network loves me very much right now. They love me very much. I've never been so loved by CBS and by ABC fake news. And by NBC. No, they're all in love with me now, so that, you know, I say yes, because it's up to me, obviously, also.
But, on the
look,
debate,
the most important thing is we get debate. I think debates are very important, and I think she'll be exposed just like Biden was exposed. Nobody knew Biden was that bad, and then he was exposed during the debate, and they tried to have a series of comebacks after that, and they didn't work out too well, and they viciously overthrew him. I mean, he was overthrown in it, using every trick in the book. They overthrew him. It was pretty amazing, actually, to watch.
I want to come back to the debate. Just to close this up, you're in litigation with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. So there's right, and the judge says, the suit's going to go forward. So how could you go on ABC, especially if he's going to be one of the moderators?
Well, you could use that as an excuse. I could use that. I've said that. Is there a conflict? And, you know, there might be. George Slopadopoulos, and he's got problems, and, you know, they've got problems. But they're going to have I guess David Muir is going to be the host in that case. You have all the hosts are pretty much named, and you have Brett and Martha, and they're great. And I'd love to see it on Fox, but, you know, it takes two to tango.
Well, maybe you get two.
She
maybe
doesn't want to debate. Look, she doesn't want to debate. She wants to say, I don't want to debate, but I do want to debate. You know, when it came to Biden, I accepted everything. I accepted Jake Tapper. I accepted everything because he didn't want to debate. After I accepted everything, the only thing I said, let's stand up. They wanted to sit down at a desk. I said, that's not going to look so great. So I said, but I accepted everything. And you know, pretty much that's the way I do it right now, because I want to debate her. I think it's important for the country that we debate. Now, where it is, I'm all for Fox. I'd like to see it on Fox. I think Fox would do a really good job, but two people have to agree.
All right, Mr. President, let's talk about some of the issues. Mr. Walz, Governor Walz, said this about you, that you don't understand kitchen table issues. Listen.
Donald Trump's not fighting for you or your family. He never sat at that kitchen table like the one I grew up at, wondering how we were going to pay the bills. He sat at his country club up in Mar-a-Lago, wondering how he can cut taxes for his rich friends.
Mr. President, what's your response to that?
Well, I think it's just the opposite. I think if you see the vote, those people are all voting for me, the people that he's talking about with the kitchen table. And I was not always sitting at Mar-a-Lago either, but I was sitting at lots of other places and built an unbelievable business, one of the greatest businesses. I built a business that is phenomenal. That's been really determined now how good it is. And, I could have a very simple life and a very good life and continue to do what I love. I love business and I love creating jobs, and that's what we're doing. We'll be creating jobs at a level that you've never seen before. If you look at our administration, the most successful administration from the economy standpoint there ever was. There's never been any administration that was even close, numbers-wise. And by the way, they had inflation, the level which our country probably has never seen. They say you go back 72 years. Well, I think we probably never have seen inflation like that, and it's killing the same people that he's talking about. It's killing. Inflation has destroyed their administration, and they have no idea what to do about it. It's getting worse, and you had a crash the other day of over 1,000 points. It's a very bad situation that we're going in. We could end up in a depression if these people are reelected.
So let's talk about anti-Semitism. Van Jones had an interesting thing to say about anti-Semitism. He says this on CNN. It's just because he's a moderate. They're talking about Shapiro not getting the job. Or is there some anti-Jewish bias there? He goes, you also have anti-Semitism that's gotten marbled into this party. You can't be for the Palestinians without being anti-Jewish bigot, but there are some anti-Jewish bigots out there, and there's some disquiet now, and there has to be how much that just happened. How much is this pick, I guess he's saying, caving into the anti-Jewishness, anti-Semitism that's marbled into the party? Do you think that's marbled into the party? Because if I could bring in something else that's new, CNN did a poll, and they asked Jewish New Yorkers, if the election was today, who you'd vote for. And for the first time maybe ever since Ronald Reagan, you have a 1-point lead over Kamala Harris among Jewish voters in New York. Your reaction to Van Jones and that poll?
Well, we're going to try and win New York, and that hasn't been done for many, many decades, as you know, but we're trying to win New York, and we're very close to doing it. And probably that's another reason I was somewhat surprised. I think that any Jewish person who votes for a Democrat, or in this case, these people, but who votes for a Democrat, should have their head examined. They are so bad. If you look, they are so bad to Jewish people, what they've done and the way they talk and their policy and everything else, far beyond just what happened, because everyone thought it was going to be Shapiro. It turned out not to be Shapiro. I have very little doubt that it was, not for the reason we're talking about. It was because of the fact that he's Jewish, and they think they're going to offend somebody else.
Wow.
And you wouldn't feel very comfortable if you're in Israel right now with this team. This is the worst team ever assembled for a Jewish person or for Israel, either one. The worst team ever assembled. This is a team that will not be there. And I think I'm going to get a tremendous amount of Jewish votes. I think I was doing fine there, but I think it's a big difference. Traditionally, Jewish people vote for Democrats, but we won last time. We won Miami. We won areas that nobody's ever won before with Jewish people. But when he didn't pick Shapiro, and I don't think Shapiro was the second best person or the third. I think there were other people better than him. I know them all. And, but I was shocked when it came down to the final two that he didn't pick Shapiro. I was very surprised.
Mr. President, here's another soundbite of the current vice president talking about, on her watch with Joe Biden, things are just absolutely great, right? Watch.
In Pennsylvania, we fight for a future with affordable housing, affordable health care, affordable child care, paid leave. We fight for a future where we bring down prices that are still too high and lower the cost of living for America's families.
Okay, so there, she is co-pilot to Joe Biden. So while inflation and prices have been through the roof during their administration, now she's trying to put on a happy face about how we're going to turn it all around. Mr. President, I'm sure you've seen over the last week or so, her team has been leaking to the New York Times. All those things we used to stand for, we're not for them anymore because we've adopted all new policies. That's probably one of the reasons why she has not appeared on television. And so she's trying to appear more moderate to appeal to people in the middle. and she's getting away with it. The honeymoon for Kamala Harris, it must drive you crazy because it's still going on.
It does, and there's only one thing, because she's just talking about Pennsylvania. No fracking. That means your energy prices are going to go through the roof, but that means Pennsylvania's going to lose 500,000 jobs. More important than the 500,000 jobs, they're going to lose tremendous streams of money. She wants no fracking, and she wants no fracking. She's trying to say now that she wants, she's gone through every single thing that was a horror show, and she disavows it now. She disavows the no fracking. If she does no fracking, and she will 100% do it. One thing I've learned about politicians, and you people knew it maybe before me, but I've known it for a long time, their first thought is the thought that they end up doing. She's for no fracking. She's for defund the police. She was the original defunder of the police. She was the original no cash bail, cashless bail, which has caused havoc. And look at how she's destroyed San Francisco. She started it out as the DA in San Francisco with policies that were so bad. It's a crime-ridden place. It went to the greatest city in America. It's a crime-ridden place right now. It's not livable. You can't even live there. And then she went to Attorney General. She's destroyed California. Her and Gavin Newsom have absolutely destroyed California. And what a shame. What a beautiful place it was. But it's not beautiful anymore. She cannot get away, because if she does this to America, every one of us are going to either be leaving or we're going to be living like dogs. Our whole country, our whole system is going to collapse. Even the talk about her has driven the stock market down.
Yeah.
When the stock market goes down, when you see it go down, that's because she gets a decent poll number. She gets bounces at her poll, the market goes down. The stock market will collapse like in 1929 if they're elected.
We know people are...
What's crazy is that we're seeing that the thing with the not choosing Josh Shapiro because he's Jewish, they're very progressive. Her VP is very progressive, a lot of progressive stances. I don't feel like they're trying to be moderate. I feel like she's trying to be moderate, but at the same time, too, who you pick as your VP is pretty important when it comes to how moderate you are, because they're going to be carrying out a lot of your policies. And if they're not moderate, it could flip. I want to show you this video real quick again of what Biden said that you won't believe, because earlier we were having some technical issues, but check this out. Biden says that there's not going to be a peaceful transfer of power if Trump wins the election. Check this out.
You confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses,
Did you hear that? If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all.
I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath. Have to be a stolen election. Look what they're trying to do now in the local election districts where people count the votes. They're putting people in place in states that...
What's so bad about having people count the votes? That's what I'm trying to understand. But Biden, you just heard it out of his mouth that this is things that they're working on. We already know that there's Democratic Congress people that are planning that if Trump wins, they've already said it, we will stop Trump from being president. We will use the 14th Amendment to keep him from being president. This is, and now Biden is essentially confirming that there wouldn't be a peaceful transfer. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, because this isn't right. It's so crazy to think that for the people that say that Trump is going to destroy democracy, we're starting to hear the truth actually come out whenever they're not going to get their way. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. But what's crazier is whenever you look at the entire scope of who Trump's going to choose as his cabinet if he wins, how they're going to execute, but honestly, what America is faced with when it comes to their choices for this election. Check this out.
Former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy is here. How does this pick change the dynamic of this race, Vivek?
The reality is, to be totally frank, the last few weeks have not been our best, Jesse. This gives us the reset that we needed. This is a gift from on high from the Democratic Party. It is also a lens into how Kamala Harris will govern. Unlike a lot of other people, I don't think Kamala Harris is particularly ideological. I don't think she has far left ideology. I don't think she has any ideology. But it shows how she's going to buckle to pressure, because this was the first presidential style decision that she had before her. Do you want a governing agenda of a centrist who I disagree with on a lot of things, but Josh Shapiro, or do you want to buckle to the cave of the pressure from the radical left? She made the choice. And so I think this is our best lens to see how she's actually going to govern.
Yep.
The reality is the vice president is far less relevant. He's not going to be the one setting policy. The reason I actually find this decision fascinating is it gives us a lens into the way Kamala Harris makes decisions. And the reality is she buckles to the person who ultimately puts the most pressure on her.
Obama.
That's what we learned today. This was a gift. It resets the race. And I think we are on path back yet, once again, to a victory, because Pennsylvania could back again be in play for Republicans.
Yeah, you're right. Shapiro definitely was going to help with Pennsylvania. He doesn't help anywhere. They say he helps with the Midwestern white man. Are they going to buy this guy that wants to give boys tampons in 4th grade?
The reality is this is a guy they're pitching in completely the wrong way as some type of Midwestern unifier. First of all, you can't be the unifier while also leading the charge on calling 70+ million Americans weird in his term. And the reality is we have a much stronger case in return if we want to play that game. Boys versus girls, can't define the difference. Boys competing with girls in women's sports competitions, even taking away your gas stoves. He's actually been one of the greatest climate alarmist governors in the United States on the left or the right. So if we wanted to level that charge in return, we have a stronger case. But the reality is he can't be a unifier, but also somebody who's alienating 70+ million Americans as just plain weird, as he calls it. The other thing is it's just one Potemkin village of identity politics, Jesse. The Democrats, it's almost as they don't look at the actual content of the candidates they put up. They realized it had to be a black woman in the vice presidency, now the presidency. That's exactly the reason Kamala got her job. But having checked that box, now they need to revert the other direction,
right?
Which is a Midwestern, folksy white guy of a regular type. And the reality is when they stop giving positions out on the basis of merit and start using these group quotas in either direction, they end up with the worst of all worlds, and that's what this ticket represents.
The Minneapolis riots, that's going to be front and center in this campaign. It's going to be about the economy. But remember in that summer what happened. He let that city burn. He let it burn. And then blamed America for the fact that it burned. Why would she pick someone like that on the ticket? Why?
Well, the fact of the matter is she wasn't making a sound decision, but there's 3 issues that matter in this election, Jesse. Immigration, economy, crime. On economy, he raised taxes, shows you what he thinks about economic growth. On immigration, he wants to build a ladder over the border wall and give free health care and taxpayer-funded subsidies to migrants. And on crime, that's really where the George Floyd riots come in. This is not turning America into St. Paul or Minneapolis. That's what they want to do. We say no. We have a clear choice to do it in the ballot box in November. And I think this is now our race to lose. Let's step up, focus on our agenda. And if we do, we win this thing once again.
You're right about the Democrat machine. They have decided to run crazy San Francisco and burning Minneapolis against Donald Trump. And that is just, that's not going to work out. I don't think it's going to work out. We'll wait and see, but...
Yeah, I don't think it is either. This is the thing. When it comes to our elected officials, number one is we need to put Americans first. I don't like it whenever you hear that we're giving our taxpayer dollars away to migrants, to illegal immigrants. I mean, it is what it is. We have so many that are on Social Security, so many that are hurting, so many that are really trying to make ends meet, but they can't. And all of our taxpayer dollars, when they're given to somebody else that didn't pay into the system, that isn't an American citizen, to me, it's like a slap in the face as an American who, this is our country. And whenever you have officials who show those policies, then you have to ask, where's their priority at? But what I dislike too is that Kamala Harris still has yet to do an interview, still has yet to take questions and not just give a speech and talk to the American people and be asked hard questions about her policies, why she's flip-flopped on all of her policies that she's believed in, and where does she actually stand. J.D. Vance actually met her at Air Force 2 to try to say, hey, look, come on, what's going on? Check this out.
So I know you're covering the vice president here. I figured I'd come by and one, just get a good look at the plane, because hopefully it's going to be my plane in a few months. But I also thought you guys might get lonely because the vice president doesn't answer questions from reporters. It hasn't for 17 days. Have they given you guys an explanation for why she won't take questions from reporters? No? Nobody? Okay, great. Well, I hope that she changed her mind, because it'd be good for the American people, and I think it'd be good for you all if she actually ran a real...
Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. How come Kamala Harris still has yet to answer any questions from reporters, yet to do a sit-down interview? I mean, this is about as bad as it was for President Biden whenever he resigned through posting on X.com. Like, how weird, how messed up is that to literally walk away from the presidency by a social media post? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Campaign instead of one from a basement with teleprompter. So have a good one, guys. See ya. What would you like to hear from her? I'd love her to answer some questions. I'd love her to just answer what she wants to do and also explain why every single position she has changed. She pretends to be a prosecutor, yet she pretends to be a tough on crime prosecutor, and yet here she is. Well, he's on the police. She's the border czar, yet she's opened up the American southern border. This is a person who has to answer the questions from the media. And it's disgraceful that she runs for you guys. It's also insulting for
Ashley P, I think you're right. They're not letting her, just like they controlled Biden and they didn't allow him to do certain things, to do these interviews or whatnot. And he ran a basement campaign literally in 2020. They're going to do the same with her, because it's whenever she speaks, guys, she honestly has word salad. She even how many times has she changed the way she speaks to try to appeal to her audience, trying to be that fake? To me, it bothers me because it's just so fake.
But anyway, we're going to go do our event. I appreciate you guys being here. I wish she paid you some more attention. See ya.
So literally, JD Vance coming out and telling reporters, man, I wish that Kamala Harris actually paid attention to y'all, because she doesn't. So check this out, guys. Google is about to be upended big time. I want to show you something real quick. This is my search. If you search President Donald Trump, you got Donald Trump that pops up. And then the first top stories is Tim Walz is Kamala Harris's running mate. Tim Walz is Kamala Harris's running mate. This is about Kamala Harris. It ain't about Trump. But if you search for Vice President Kamala Harris, top stories is about Harris introduces Walz. So this is again where it's like, how is it possible that they are allowing this manipulation on the search engine? This should be about Trump. This should be about JD Vance, not about their opponents, not about somebody else. But I want you to see this video of what's actually going to happen with Google because of all this crazy stuff, because a federal judge has actually called them to be a monopoly. Check this out.
In a move that will likely turn the internet as we know it upside down, a federal judge has ruled that Google's search engine is in fact an illegal monopoly. Google blasting the ruling, saying, quote, this decision recognizes that Google offers the best search engine, but concludes that we shouldn't be allowed to make it easily available.
But this isn't the first time the tech giant's been hit with legal action against their growing monopoly. A bipartisan coalition of 53 attorneys generals announced a $700 million settlement with Google back in December. Iowa Attorney General Brenna Bird led that charge, and she joins us now.
So I didn't know if you just caught that, but Google just lost a settlement, and they have to pay out $700 million for, what was it? Let me see if I can go back just a little bit. For unfair and anti-competitive practices. Remember, Google controls 91% of the search. And also, too, if you don't mind letting me know, have you been unsubscribed from my channel? I've had a lot of people that have told me that they have, and something's gone wrong. Now, over the past couple of days, we've been getting subscribers back, but for a couple of weeks, we were actually losing subscribers, which has never happened to us on this channel. But I have a lot of people that are telling me that, hey, for some reason, every time I go back to your channel, I have to resubscribe. Like, I don't know what's going on. But I do want to say thank you to everybody that is watching. If you don't mind, click the thumbs up like button. It really does help to grow the channel, but check this out.
Generals announced a $700 million settlement with Google back in December. Iowa Attorney General Brenna Bird led that charge, and she joins us now. Attorney General, good to see you. Let's talk about what's happening here with regard to Google. We have a situation where we have a lawsuit. You've won that lawsuit. Google has now promised to to appeal that decision. Where does the case stand, and what are the odds of their success on appeal?
Well, right now we have a big victory with a federal judge telling Google they have to stop their monopoly. So it's a big victory. The next stage in this proceeding will be for the judge to figure out a remedy or what Google has to do to fix it, to stop their monopoly and make sure there's competition. That's the next stage.
Has Google done anything to change its stranglehold on this part of the tech world that you're aware of, AG?
No, we haven't. We haven't seen them do anything. And in fact, they have even been paying to have their search engine be the one that is used as the default search engine that people have to use. So very much a monopoly here. We're talking 90 and 95%, very high monopoly. And that's what we do as state AGs. We go in there and we hold monopolies. We take them to court and we hold them accountable.
And so not only do they have a vast majority of the searches that are done in the country, but they're very partisan. You don't get actually a fair search. They actually have a far left-leaning bias. But I want to get your take on...
Yes, and I just showed you that a while ago, that they do have that left-leaning bias. That, remember, whenever it came to me showing you this search, that if you search for President Donald Trump, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris come up as top stories. But when you do it for Vice President Kamala Harris, the top stories are not about Trump. It's very one-sided, very one-sided. And that's, I mean, we can't have that. We have to have free and fair search. We have to have free and fair elections. I got this video that for you real quick that popped up that shows the inflation that people are dealing with in Alaska. Now, a lot of people say that this is coming to the lower United States. But check this out. This is going to blow your mind. I promise you, you won't believe this. It is crazy.
All right, so let's go shopping in Dillingham, Alaska. We're going to go ahead and start out with some $10.59 bread. And you got some peanut butter for $14.89.
$14.89 for some peanut butter? Are you kidding me? $10 for some bread?
Nobody got time for that. Ketchup is a good $18.79.
Ketchup was $18.79. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is nuts.
Like beans or canned goods, they're just only $8.03.
Oh, hell no!
You got $47 for some steak, and if you're gonna do steak and potatoes, let's go ahead and get some $26 potatoes. Yep,
$26 potatoes.
No!
Or you could go ahead and get this cute little party tray for $40.99. Okay.
How in the world are people supposed to make it? I have no idea. But I'm just still blown away by the ketchup because I love ketchup. And to see it almost at $20 a bottle? Guys, that's nuts. I'm telling you what, inflation is bad. Inflation destroys countries. I'll say this thing. You have people in the White House, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who've been career politicians. They've never ran a business. They don't know what it's like to look at a P&L. They don't know what it's like to do payroll. They don't know what it's like to do all that. And so when it comes to building an economy is about business. It's about selling goods or services to people and allowing the economy to go up. When you do that very, very well. Donald Trump has run businesses. He knows what it's like to build a business and not just have your checks come from taxpayers. Because that's all Kamala Harris and President Biden know is, the taxpayers just pay taxes and we get to spend it. And that's why we're $35 trillion in debt. And what bothers me is that now you have Kamala Harris who is coming out and saying, we're going to work on cutting down prices. It's your fault that prices are as high as they are. It's your fault that y'all kept spending. They had the Inflation Reduction Act, spent hundreds of billions of dollars, and then they did. And the whole bill wasn't even about reducing inflation. Like, it blows my mind how they want to spend more to reduce inflation. If we're going to spend more, you have to have the money in the bank to spend more. If we're already fully in debt, then how that means we have to borrow money to spend more money of what they said. We're now about to, the amount of interest that the United States is paying on its debt is about to be more per year than what we spent on defense. So right now we spend almost $900 billion on defense of the United States, our military, our Marines, the Air Force, National Guard, everything. We're about to spend more money, just think about it, on interest to pay back the money that we borrowed than how much we spent on. So we're about to spend over $1 trillion on interest. Think about if you've ever had a credit card, if you've ever had a car note or a mortgage. Imagine if the highest bill that you had out of the month was your interest payments on everything that you had. That your interest payments on your cars or your mortgage, not the car note, just the interest was higher than your highest bill out of your entire month. You'd go crazy. You'd say, forget it. I'm going to declare bankruptcy. Forget it. Well, that's where we're at right now. And these people that are trying to run for president on the Democratic side, they don't know what it's like to run a business and build an economy. And we have more information, check this out, on what's actually happening with the Democratic Party.
Kamala Harris has solidified her vision for America with her choice of far-left Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. The Democratic Socialists of America celebrated the Harris pick, saying it showed the world that they are a force that cannot be ignored. And former President Donald Trump warns the Harris-Walz ticket is the most radical in American history. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Compagno here with my co-hosts, Kayleigh McEnany and Harris Faulkner. And also joining us today, former State Department spokesperson and founder of Polaris National Security, Morgan Ortagus, and co-anchor of America's Newsroom, Bill Hemmer. Now, we're going to get into Governor Walz's liberal record this hour, but first we begin with his left-wing crime policies and his utter lack of leadership during one of the most contentious times in our country. Walz was the governor of Minnesota during the violent George Floyd riots back in 2020. Businesses were looted and set on fire, destroyed.
And just so you know, the amount of money that was lost during these riots, $500 million, $500 million.
Police officers assaulted, and the country watched in horror as the city of Minneapolis was burning to the ground. Walz was pressured to send in the National Guard, but he stalled and admitted he did not act fast enough when citizens of his own state begged him for help.
I got a call from a friend and a dedicated public servant. Senator Torres Ray called in her district, and it was on fire. And there weren't any police there. There weren't any firefighters. There was no social control, and her constituents were locked in their house wondering what they were going to do. That is an abject failure that cannot happen. If the issue is that the state should have moved faster, that is on me.
Abject failure is right. Republican Vice President candidate J.D. Vance pointing out that Kamala Harris didn't take action during those riots either. And maybe that's why they're a match.
When the police are not empowered to do their job, it is the most vulnerable people in our communities who suffer.
Exactly.
We saw that, of course, in 2020 with the summer riots with our new vice presidential nominee on the Democratic side. Makes an interesting dynamic duo with Kamala Harris because as he was promoting rioters and looters burning down the city of Minneapolis, Kamala Harris was helping to bail the rioters and looters out of jail. A really vicious cycle if you're living in that community, a really vicious cycle if you own one of those businesses that was burned down. And of course,
Guys, that's kind of messed up. Let me know your thoughts on this. So Walz literally allowed the city of Minneapolis to burn, even though people have said, hey, call in the National Guard, call in this. He literally let it burn for days, riots for days, police officers assaulted. And then right after, you had Kamala Harris who came out and said, hey, let's set up a bail fund for all those rioters that are put in jail so that we can bail them out. Well, guess what? Some of those people that they bailed out came out and committed vicious, vicious crimes.
Vicious cycle. If you're one of the poor kids who needs law and order, who needs common sense safety, but doesn't have access to it because our government so often refuses to do its job.
And by our government, Harris, he means Governor Walz. And I want to point out something and get your thoughts on something in particular, which is that when he talks about the vulnerable communities there that were disproportionately affected and remain affected to this day, they are in fact disproportionately communities of color. And yet this ticket was somehow presented to us as somehow jettisoning us into the future, taking us light years ahead for those vulnerable people of color. And yet under their watch, they are who suffered most.
So I was on air for, at that time, ABC in Minneapolis for many years. And when you take a look at that video and you see all the flames and the businesses, buildings burning to the ground.
Wow.
It's not just a loss for the businesses, it's a loss for entire communities, plural. Particularly the people who are hired by small businesses, which we know makes north of 60% across the country. They're the biggest hiring faction that we have in the country. So for that particular community of color, though, it was already a struggle because they were living under policies that weren't edifying them at the time. So when you wipe away whatever financial prosperity they had by taking away the hiring capability and the business's resilience to come back, you've changed things for at least a generation, particularly in communities of color. It is a problem, and for him not to acknowledge the mistake of stepping in, not stepping in sooner than those 4 days, to have let more damage happen than was already in play, to not make sure that the punitive damages and the understanding across the country that we will not live under tyranny by our neighbors who happen not to agree on how to protest something. Can't keep it quiet, can't keep, not quiet, but safe and peaceful was the word I was searching for.
Wow.
If we have to live under that, then he's got to speak up and stop it as governor. He's got to accept help from then President Trump for the National Guard to come in faster. Check the facts on it. He didn't do that. So he's disingenuous when he says he cares. It's all in the rearview mirror. We don't know exactly what the future holds, but if he's in charge of it, it could look a lot like Minneapolis did in 2020.
And Bill, we reported extensively on, for example, the police station there in Minneapolis being totally under siege by members of outside the community. We know that members of the community were pleading for help. We also reported extensively on those, for example, elders in the community that couldn't access their medication, their prescriptions and the like. Wow. We also reported on them crowdfunding to pay for off-duty officers to protect their neighborhoods there in Minneapolis because the governor failed at his job.
So much to say. I'm not quite sure where to begin, but I'll go ahead and give it a shot. I think the last 16 hours have been absolutely fascinating. In the big picture, I think Kamala Harris picked exactly what she was looking for. They have taken and cobbled together, in the words of Van Jones, marbled together a progressive ticket. And they're putting all their chips on progressive policies. And they believe they can win 1% more than Trump Vance can win in these 3 or 4, might not even be 7, might be just 3 or 4 states. And they think they can do better. I thought what J.D. Vance did today was very interesting. He's been hitting Kamala Harris because she doesn't take any questions. We'll see whether or not Tim Walz is different or not. And I don't know when she breaks this string, right? We're 17 days in. We're 13 days removed from Chicago's convention. I assume she does a press conference before then, but I don't know. I thought what Vance did today with the cops behind him, talking about law and order, is very similar to what Trump did during his first term. He was meeting with cops all the time. When he came to New York and busted up the MS-13 gang out on Long Island, I mean, he made that a prominent part of his first term. And so I think it would be very interesting. I think also the fact that J.D. Vance was in Macomb County today, that's Reagan Democrats, that's Michigan. Man, it's Minnesota, it's Wisconsin, it's Michigan, and it's on repeat for both of these campaigns at this point now.
And Kaylee, I want to focus on crime just for a moment more, and specifically with the governor there. There were other allegations that surfaced, for example, that he gave unprecedented access to his adult daughter for law enforcement movements that put first responders at risk. We have, as we've discussed, the minute and also the writ large and generational impact on those communities of color and impoverished there under his state. And yet we are supposed to believe, through the few words they've shared so far, that they are somehow champions of the working Americans and those vulnerable communities. I do not buy it. I don't think anyone will. But my question to you is, will this work politically?
Look, let me just go back for a moment to the summer of 2020. I was in the White House with President Trump. It was a trying time for any leader. It was a testing period for any leader. I remember standing on Air Force One with him in his private office the first time he saw the George Floyd footage. I watched a leader. I watched someone who watched that moment and said, this is terrible. I want to bring the country together. You needed unity and you needed resolve. And he went on to NASA, and before he made his remarks before SpaceX launch, he talked in a very important, impactful way about the moment we were at. And then he exhibited leadership and called for law and order in the country. What did Tim Walz do? Tim Walz let the image on your screen, that burning, he let Minneapolis burn for days. He delayed in calling out the National Guard. I stood at the podium in June 29th of 2020 and talked about the failed governor of Minnesota, this man who did not exhibit leadership. Donald Trump wanted to morally heal our country, and then he wanted to instill law and order. And what he enabled was the second largest local unrest in American history, in modern American history. So much so you had 1,500 businesses burn, $500 million in property damage, and the police chief there said, never in my 30-year experience of multiple events of high-risk civil unrest that included mass looting, indiscriminate arson, and sounds of gunshot, direct violence of this nature. These events over the last 72 hours absolutely overwhelmed public safety. At a time when we have global unrest with Iran all around the world, you want the guy who enabled unrest in Minneapolis and in Minnesota? Why did Kamala make this pick? What a failure. That image should play in every Trump ad from now to November.
So if Minnesota is the litmus test, Morgan, for crime especially and specifically right now, it is an abject failure.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to go back to something Harris said, too, about the small businesses. And we know 4 years later that many of these small businesses never recovered, not only from COVID, because remember, draconian lockdowns in that state, but the violence as well. I grew up like an hour from Caylee in Central Florida. My father was a part of an air conditioning business. He installed air conditioners. And then later he owned a ServiceMaster franchise where they cleaned carpets. This is what he raised 3 daughters on. And this is what small communities around the country, whether it's air conditioning businesses, cleaning up, carpets and floods and fires, small businesses like this, whether it's the woman with the shop, these are the lifeblood for these communities. And whenever you take a small business out, not only are you taking away the lifeblood for the person who owns it, most of the people that my dad employed, they had children. Yep. They had families that they were supporting. And I don't think that people really understand the ramifications for these small businesses, as Harris pointed out. And it hasn't gotten any better. I don't see why you would promote the governor based off of his record in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And what blows my mind is that when we look at which cities have the highest crime rate, which cities are doing the poorest in their education, they're Democratic-run cities. Facts. And it blows my mind how you can have Kamala Harris and her VP come out and gaslight the American people, tell them that, oh, we're going to do this for you, when they've been in charge. Biden and Harris have been in charge over the past 3.5 years, and guess what? They've done nothing. They've literally caused so many wars because Biden's not a strong leader. They've opened the border. They allowed inflation to take place. They spent loads of money that we didn't have, and we're just continuously moving down a worse path. We need better leadership, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Just want to say thank you to everybody that is watching. If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button so we can serve you every day with the top news. And thank you to all of our members. Thank you to everybody that gives a super chat, a donation on this channel. It means the world to us. It's such a blessing. And we just want to serve you every day with the top news. We thank you so much for being with us tonight, guys. We will see you in the next one. Take care and have a good night.